about military operations in these huge terms, big movements, artillery duels, stuff happening right on the front line.
Right, the grand strategy.
Exactly. But what happens when an operation is surgical? When it's driven less by taking ground and more by, I guess, intelligence and a very specific and deeply rooted historical grievance.
And that's really the core of what we're looking at today. The source material for this deep dive, it's all built around this one piece of footage, an operational video.
And it was shared by Ukraine's intelligence service directly.
It was, and that's key. They're not just showing a successful strike. They're trying to provide the whole narrative behind the strike.
So that's our mission here, to really dissect the details of this thing. The alleged motives, which are all about direct retribution and the incredibly meticulous execution of this attack on a vehicle from Russia's 76th VDV division.
And it happened deep inside the Kherson region.
Far from the front. So we're moving past the simple what happened and really digging into the why and the how.
And that stated reason, the why, is what just elevates this whole incident. It's not a standard ambush, it becomes a statement.
How so?
Well, the intelligence service didn't just hit a random patrol. They say they targeted a specific unit for a specific historical reason. They're connecting this kinetic action, this explosion, to events that happened much earlier. It's psychological warfare, really.
Let's get right into that context then, because it sounds like it's everything here. The vehicle in the video, it had 2 Russian personnel inside.
Right.
And the source identifies them as belonging to the 76th VDV division, Russia's elite air assault brigade. Now, for anyone listening who might not immediately recognize that unit, why does the 76th VDV carry so much weight?
Well, on paper, they're one of Russia's top-tier units. Right. Airborne, rapid deployment, the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
But in this conflict, they have this much, much darker stigma attached to them. Bucha. The source material explicitly identifies the 76th VDV as the unit allegedly responsible for the horrific massacre of civilians there outside Kyiv, right in that initial invasion phase. We're talking about an event where up to 458 civilians were documented as murdered.
So just by naming that unit, the entire incident is reframed. It's not a standard military operation anymore. The source is basically saying this is Ukraine getting some much-needed revenge for that atrocity.
Exactly. The whole context shifts to alleged retribution for war crimes.
That's a huge claim to make.
It is, and it's a critical distinction. And what's really fascinating here is the claim that this wasn't even just, general retaliation against the unit. Some Telegram reports that the source cites, they say the soldiers were specifically identified as being part of the group that carried out the massacre.
So not just the 76th, but specific individuals from the 76th.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
This specific identification is what triggered the targeting of this particular vehicle.
I mean, if we take that premise seriously, that's an enormous leap. To go from knowing a unit was somewhere to positively IDing specific soldiers involved in an atrocity from, a year earlier?
It implies a level of intelligence that, frankly, we don't often associate with these kinds of deep rear operations. It's one thing to spot a tank, another thing entirely to identify the person inside it based on past actions.
So how certain are we?
Well, we have to be critical, and the source analyst is too. He acknowledges, and I'm quoting here, "We don't actually know if the soldiers hit here were involved or not. But the point is, the strong probability asserted that this was executed as a targeted revenge strike. The operational intent was to send that message.
It wasn't random, that was the point.
It was a deliberate choice, linked directly to Bucha."
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. This is where we shift from the why, the motive, to the pure nuts and bolts of it, the how. Because if this was targeted, how on earth did they pull it off so far behind enemy lines?
The geography alone is pretty telling. This all went down in the occupied Kherson region.
Which is nowhere near the current fighting.
No, it's deep in the rear, closer to the Black Sea coast.
Yeah.
To pull off a precision strike here, that requires a massive investment. Patience, risk, and incredible intelligence.
Right, this wasn't them just stumbling upon a military truck. They clearly knew the specific vehicle, and they knew its route.
Precisely. The location and the car's movements were geolocated by a very well-regarded OSINT analyst, Blinkinska.
Okay.
And this analyst provided a map, and it traces the vehicle's path. It's moving around what looks like a Russian base or some kind of compound. The car follows a very specific pattern. It heads south, then it turns west to drive alongside the compound, and then it continues south again down the road.
And that pattern is the tell, isn't it? If you know that path, what does that mean?
It means you have exceptional intelligence coverage. The source basically surmises this had to be a regular route. something used daily, maybe weekly, by troops coming and going from that base.
Because you need that predictability.
You absolutely need it. It's the only way you can confidently place a device, like an IED, and know you're going to hit that one specific target you're waiting for. It points to either some very sophisticated signals intelligence or, what I think is more likely, high-level human intelligence. Boots on the ground right there in Kherson.
We think of these deep strikes now as, long-range missiles or drones. That's become so common. But that's not what happened here.
No, not at all. This was an IED, an improvised explosive device, or maybe a mine, placed right along that route.
But not just any mine, right?
Definitely not. It wasn't a simple pressure plate mine that would just hit any vehicle driving over it. The source analyzes the footage and suggests it was much more likely a remote charge.
Meaning someone was watching and waiting to push a button.
Exactly. It was detonated at the perfect moment to guarantee a hit on that specific car. That detail, that's what removes the element of luck.
And that technological choice, that's critical. A random mine is a lottery ticket. A remote charge, that's an assassination.
It is. It means you have an operator hidden nearby, watching, or some kind of sensor system feeding back live video. You need to confirm the target is in the blast zone, and then you trigger it. The coordination and, the trust in your local operative has to be absolute.
Which just reinforces this entire idea of a targeted operation. They were waiting for that specific car.
And the whole thing was managed and then documented by Ukraine's intelligence service. They didn't just do it. They then shared the video and the motive with the world.
Turning the kinetic strike into, what, a piece of information warfare?
A piece of calculated communication? Absolutely. And in doing so, they're also admitting, implicitly, that they're communicating with and rely on these incredibly high-risk operatives behind the lines.
Who had to do surveillance, plant the charge, and then detonate it. I mean, the security challenge there is just massive.
And the video itself, it kind of supports this. The analyst points out that the person recording is just discreetly filming this car as it drives past.
Knowing what's about to happen.
Fully aware that in seconds there's going to be a huge explosion. That proximity, that awareness, it suggests the camera operator was either the trigger person or was right there with them.
And the explosion itself, the source mentions a pretty vivid detail.
Oh yeah, they called it a nice bonnet toss. After the charge goes off, you just see the car's bonnet go flying straight up into the air.
What does a detail like that tell you, technically?
It confirms a really powerful directed charge, placed either right under the vehicle's path or immediately next to it, and focused to push all that energy upward. It's not shrapnel damage. He was designed for one thing: focused, catastrophic destruction of that vehicle and its occupants. It's the kinetic punctuation mark on a very long intelligence sentence.
Okay, let's pivot a bit to the victims themselves, because the source goes beyond just the unit. There's some really interesting speculation about their rank, based on the car they were in and where they were.
Right. If you look at the car, it's a Lada or something similar, a civilian model, not your standard military truck.
Not a troop transport?
No. And the source notes that this is exactly the kind of vehicle often used by officers, not your bog-standard enlisted soldiers.
And it just makes sense. If you're going to all this risk, the intelligence, the remote IED deep in enemy territory, you're not doing it for a couple of privates. You're going after a high-value target.
Which almost always means officers. And the location backs this up completely. This town is far from the front, near the coast. It's exactly where senior staff would be based.
Somewhere they'd feel safe.
Right. Safe enough to travel in a more, say, conspicuous car.
Yeah.
And so this brings up a huge question. Could these two have been officers who were involved in ordering the Bucha massacre, not just the foot soldiers carrying it out?
Wow. That's a profound possibility. That this wasn't just revenge, but revenge against the command structure responsible.
The source suggests it, though, to be clear, Ukraine's official statements didn't confirm the ranks, but just the capability demonstrated here, hitting officers in what they thought was a secure rear area, that's the really big takeaway.
If you connect all these dots, the bigger picture here is about capability, isn't it? This one incident shows a really significant high-level capacity for this kind of asymmetric warfare.
It's the whole package. It's the intelligence, it's mapping the patterns, and then it's the ability to deploy and detonate a precision remote charge that far from the battlefield. That sends a very dangerous message to Russia's entire rear echelon.
And a powerful psychological one, too. As you said, this isn't just a military hit. It's driven by this public claim of retribution for war crimes. So what's the strategic value for Ukraine's intelligence service in releasing all this, and specifically linking it to Bucha?
Well, the strategic value is twofold, I think. First, for the domestic audience, and for Ukraine's allies, it frames the war in moral terms. It's a justified response to an atrocity that helps with morale and support.
And the second part.
The second part is the message aimed directly at the Russian military, specifically at its command structure. It's telling every officer sitting comfortably in the rear, we know who you are, we know what you've done, and distance doesn't make you safe anymore.
It fundamentally changes the risk calculation for those commanders. The biggest danger used to be near the front line. Now, maybe the biggest danger is tied to your own past actions and how good the enemy's intelligence is.
So when you're processing news from the conflict, what does all this mean for you? I think this one, very well-documented operation shows you that convergence. You have intelligence work, you have high-risk targeted operations, and you have this strategic use of historical grievance. It shows that in modern war, the strongest motives, like revenge for atrocities, can drive the most sophisticated operations.
So, to just quickly summarize the key facts from this deep dive, we've looked at a highly targeted IED, or remote charge strike, deep in the Kherson region. The target was a vehicle carrying members of Russia's 76th VDV.
And the operation was driven by the publicly stated motive of retribution for the war crimes that unit allegedly committed in Bucha.
And we really focused on the sophistication required to pull it off. The positive identification, mapping a regular travel route, and then the execution with a precision remote charge. All of it handled by operatives deep behind the lines.
That level of control is just
Yeah.
it's really something. It tells you a lot about Ukrainian capabilities in this domain.
So, building on that, and on the speculation from the source about officers being the target, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If specific units, and maybe even specific commanders, are now being publicly marked for retribution based on past atrocities, how does that fundamentally shift the operational risk for high-ranking Russian personnel, especially those in what they thought were safe rear areas? Does the threat of a targeted, intelligence-driven IED strike now override the assumed security of just being far from the battlefield? That's a whole new dimension of risk for them to consider as this war continues to evolve.